Well, we have a fantastic interview today. Always a fun one, but today is really one of those special ones that I've been looking forward to for a while. Today we have none other than Larry Mathews, who played Ritchie on the Dick Van Dyke Show. So I don't know, it just didn't get more fun than that. I love the show and it's fantastic. So Larry, thanks so much for being on.
John, my pleasure, man. It's good to be here and happy to do it for you. And always fun to talk about the Dick Van Dyke Show and what a great experience it was for me. So yeah.
You know what? I love that. I really do. I think that the fans, will sense that from you anyway. I mean, it's so obvious. But I was wondering right out of the gates, why don't you tell me, do you remember the first time that you actually met Dick Van Dyke?
The first time I met Dick was when we filmed the pilot. I mean, I'd never met him before that. The only person when I got the job that I had actually met was Carl Reiner, because
Really?
Carl interviewed me and Carl hired me. And then when we went to do the pilot and started rehearsals is when I met everybody: Dick, Mary, Morey, Rose, everybody.
Wow. Did you obviously Dick's going to be playing your father. Did you did he immediately, did you have a feeling like, oh, this is a great guy, or was he as crazy as he was, on the show?
No, Dick is just a very wonderful person. He's he's a great comedic performer. He's a great performer in general, but he was always very, humble and, sweet and wonderful. And to me, and it was, I was only like, what, 5 years old or something when we did the pilot. And so, it was just kind of fun for me to be around people that I could pretend were, be away from my family and pretend that I had a real good, no, I had another family, which was fun to do. But yeah, and Mary probably more than anything in terms of that mother kind of figure, kind of right off the bat was very nurturing and very helpful, and just kind of slid into that role pretty easily, actually, with her and I.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And again, Dick too, don't get me wrong. Dick was always there to help and advise and, say, no, I mean, maybe, we should do this, and, just take care of the, whatever that Ritchie needs to do. Dick would, kind of chime in and help with that. And also felt like another dad in a lot of ways to me as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I had heard. I mean, I did quite a bit of research, but I had seen the documentary too on Mary Tyler Moore that they released recently too. And if I'm overstating this, then tell me. But I got the impression that she was like, I don't know, for you, or you were to her very special in the sense that she had kind of an interesting relationship with her own son, and it was like you were her, kind of like her son.
Yeah, there's definitely some credence to that. Mary said in her book that at a point when we were doing the Dick Van Dyke Show, I felt like more of a son to her than her own son did. And I knew Ritchie, and I knew him fairly well, and her son was named Ritchie as well. And but it was just, she was a career person. She and Grant, Ralph Meeker originally, but then Grant, of course, when he married her, that was her path. That was what she wanted to do. So, she didn't see Ritchie a lot. Ritchie was away in school and maybe hanging out with his dad sometimes. But that's what Mary, it was I was really surprised that, well, I thought it was a very good documentary, by the way. I thought they did a really great job with it. And I was, one thing I never knew all my life until I saw the documentary, which was really cool, is when she accepted her first Emmy Award, when she won the Emmy for Best Actress. She actually thanked all of us, and she thanked me also in that speech. And I'm like, I never knew that. It was kind of cool. So it was like, that was kind of neat.
That's really cool that you're watching it. You're not, you're thinking, well, I kind of know most of this, and then you see that moment. That's cool.
It was definitely like, wow, that was really neat. So yeah, it was fun.
Wow. And am I correct? At some point too, she actually told you in your life, you know, like what, as far as like just as an actor, as a person, that she was like, proud of you or whatever. I mean, more or less.
So when we were doing the Dick Van Dyke Revisited show, which was 2004, which was, if you remember, it was like the 159th or 60th episode. Anyway, Carl
Mhm.
didn't want to do like a regular reunion clip show, so he wrote a script of, where they are 40 years later, and it was a really good show.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I've seen it. Yeah.
and we were I was doing my part as I was on the phone with Alan Brady, and we were at break and we were at lunch or something, and Mary came up to me and she says, I've been meaning to talk to you and tell you something. She goes, "You're really, really excellent at what you're doing. This is the hardest thing to do, is a phone call with nobody on the other side of it as an actor, and you're perfect at it. You're really great."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, thanks, Mary. I mean, I try my best. I do my best, to do that." And she goes, "No, you're not listening." She goes, "You're brilliant."
Mm.
She goes, "It is amazing." She goes, "And she goes, "And the man you become," because at the time I did post-production. I was doing sales for post-production and different facilities, and that's kind of where I made most of my career at.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and she said, "The man you become, the person you are," she goes, "I'm so, so proud of you." She goes, and she goes, "I just want you to know that." And it was just meant the world to me. It's kind of one of the last things we ever said, which was really a nice closure. It was funny because my real mother happened to walk up at the time,
Oh,
who
wow.
was visiting the set at the time, and Mary said, she goes, "You know something?" She goes, "You have a really incredible, incredible son. He is an amazing man, and you should be very, very proud of him." She goes, "Because I know I am." And I was like, wow. So it was kind of cool. It
Wow.
was,
That's, I
yeah,
mean, I'll be honest with you, that's pretty heavy. I mean, that's really a cool moment.
it was, and it's something that I cherish and will have with me all my life, which just makes it special, really.
Well, also the fact that, I had heard like some of this a little bit, but I didn't realize your own mom was there. I mean, that's really, I don't care how old you get, your mother is always your mother. And to have someone that is on that level, say how great you are, that must have meant so much to your own mom as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. My mom's wonderful, but she can be a little kind of like, okay, great, thank you. She's very,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a stoic German, kind of thing where she's like, "Oh, that's great." But it did mean a lot to her, I know. And she just happened to be visiting the set that day while we were doing rehearsals and stuff. And it was, I know she was very, very overwhelmed and proud and amazingly taken back to hear that from Mary, like you said, somebody on that level. And she mentioned it, but she'd never, my mom would never sit there and go like, "Oh, I'm so overwhelmed." It's like, no, she'd go like, "Well, that was really nice." Anyway, but that's mothers, right? That's what your parents do. What can I tell you?
I could totally see it. Yeah. I have the Italian mom, so I kind of get it though too.
Well, my dad's Sicilian, so my dad
Oh,
is all Sicilian, and my mother was German and English and Scotch. So yeah, I get both sides of it, but the Sicilians comes out really dominant in our family for sure.
yeah. Well, by the way, mine is also Sicilian, so I
Oh
really get
boy,
it, Larry.
that's
So going back, that's right. So going back, you were 5, as you said, when you started the show. Do you remember? I mean, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but do you remember that actual audition, process, or how this even came about? Like, how? By the way, how did you get interested in acting?
oh yeah, I remember very vividly actually. So when I was young, since I can remember, I was always the one that was like, I would like, sit in front of TV or look at people or whatever, especially I was a big Alvin and the Chipmunks fan. And I would imitate that. And I'm one of 7 children. So I
Wow.
was the only kid that would get out there and just be a really like, mimic and ham and just always want to be, in the spotlight. doing stuff. And so the mailman, believe it or not, said to my mother one time, says, you know, I have a friend that teaches children acting lessons, if you think Larry'd be interested. And my mom, you know, asked me, and she says, do you want to go, like, you know, do these play scenes and pretend and you know, play like another character and do that? And you know, and I was like, yeah, that's sure, why not? You know what I mean? It was great. It was something to do. You're a kid. It was a different way to you know how kids are. We go out and have our own realities in a lot of ways, right? Because that's what you
Yeah,
do as you
yeah.
grow up, right? And so that was kind of, I think, what that was. And I was really happy about it. And I went and I studied with her for a while. They would hold showcases for agents to come over and you know, see scenes. I did a scene from a play called The Thousand Clowns, if anybody knows what
Oh,
that
I know.
is.
Heck, I know it. Yeah.
And so they said, yes, we'd like to represent Larry. They sent me an interview with Carl Reiner. I was, I think, one of only two of their clients they sent on the interview. And I remember I went into Carl's office, and you know, he says, you know, he was explaining to me, we're, you know, be this child of these two kids. He's a comedy writer, and blah blah blah. And you're really sick, right? You know, in this first episode. So can you lay down and, like, you know, tell me how sick you are? Your tummy hurts, and you know, really, you know, just you know, pretend like you're really really sick and do that. And I did. And it was great. And you know, it came down to me and another kid. The other kid had done some stuff. Carl kind of wanted somebody that had never really done anything,
Wow.
that they could just kind of let Ritchie take its, you know, what's the word I'm looking for, just to kind of develop into Ritchie as the character without having any kind of pre-notions.
Yeah.
And he picked me, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh my gosh, that is really something.
Just want to take a quick break and let you know that Larry Mathews is going to be at a live in-person event called the Kids of Desilu. It's extremely cool. It's going to be held out at Indian Wells Resort, which is out towards the Palm Springs, California area, on September 8th. And in addition to Larry being there from the Dick Van Dyke Show, you have Keith Thibodeaux from I Love Lucy, who played Little Ricky. He's going to be there, and he's also going to be playing the drums, by the way. In addition, you've got Stanley Livingston, who played Chip from My Three Sons. Stan's a great guy. And then Tina Cole is also going to be there from My Three Sons. And then to top it off, you have John Provost, who played Timmy from Lassie. He will also be there. It includes dinner, games. I'll be hosting the event, by the way, so I'll be talking to, you know, each of the celebrities of, you know, questions and answers, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. A great, you know, great meal as well. And Carolyn Peterson is actually sponsoring it. She is with Night of Dreams. If you contact her and tell her that you are a That's Classic fan, she will give you a 2-for-1 ticket, which is, you know, wonderful. And that might even apply to some of the celebrity tables. So just remember, just say you're a That's Classic fan. The phone number for Carolyn is 949-439-9504. So you can call her directly. Also, you can email her at carolyn@nightofdreams.com. That's CAROLYN at NITEOFDREAMS.com. Carolyn@nightofdreams.com. And just go to the website too, nightofdreams.com. Check it out. I mean, even if you can't attend, you'll enjoy going to the website and seeing, you know, what's going to take place and where it is. By the way, the Indian Wells Resort and Hotel was designed by Lucy and Desi in 1957. So it's kind of special in that way too. All right, let's get back to the interview with Larry Mathews. Thanks.
You know, it's really funny. You know, I've watched a few of the Dick Van Dyke episodes this past week even, but I mean, it's kind of on my rotation, let's say. But you were, and I'm not just, you know, like, hey, because you're on the show, I'm saying this, but honestly, you were a natural. You know, when you mentioned that you were, you know, he had you go in and do the I'm sick to my stomach, you had so many scenes where you had so many different levels of emotions, and they were so natural. Or when you're like nuzzling into whether it be Mary or Dick and whatever, it was like you really bought it. Was that, I mean, do you think you were kind of, you know, it just kind of was innate in you?
I do in a lot of ways, and thank you for saying that, because that does mean a lot to me. It's funny, as a kid, you don't really, I think, realize what, you don't really appreciate what your performances are, because you're just doing it. And again, as you said, it was just very natural for me, and I just was able to like fall into that world very easily.
Mhm.
And I remember that when we and I remember that, sometimes when there would be laughs, I'd have to, like, Barry Livingston and I talk about this, because he was on a show with us one time, and we kind of had to keep ourselves from doing, that, but so, and that's what I remember. And then, but then conversely, when I sit there now and I watch the shows, and I mean, over the years, not just now, but over the years, as I, became an adult and was
Sure.
able to understand the comedy, how brilliant the show was, how amazing Carl Reiner was, how amazing the cast was, and then see my own performances. Uh, not to be arrogant or to prank, but I sit there and go like, God, I was really good there, man. That was a really good performance. So
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, it was pretty easy for me to do.
And it's wild too, because we're talking about two comedy giants. I mean, Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, there's everybody's always going to go, well, I don't know, were they this big? Were they were huge? And you kept up with them. I mean, I saw an episode. Oh, I don't know, maybe it was last week. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember you poured your orange juice into Dick's glass, and then he comes walking in for breakfast, and then he pours it back into your glass, and just it's just like this natural reaction, and it's very funny, but you're keeping up at a level that is just really impressive. I mean, anyway, I just thought it was really cool.
Thank you. That's, again, it means a lot. It was funny because, Dick and Mary were, like I said, on set when there were things going on, and we'd rehearse and I would do something. They would be happy to sit there and say, well, maybe try this or do that. But also, I have to credit, like, really, like, Carl and John Rich, who was our director for the first 2 years or so of the show.
Hmm.
And the people that were behind the scenes that, basically would guide me on the journey and guide me through the scenes. And as I said, it just, once I heard the direction, it was very easy for me to just do that. Side story, when we did the revisited show, we went into rehearsal, and I didn't have the current script, and I'm reading the things, and Carl's kind of like, well, that's not what I wrote. And anyway, it's like, it was, whatever. So
Yeah.
they gave me the script, and I rehearsed it with him, and he turned to me and he says, I said, Carl, I said, tell me what you want. Tell me where Ritchie is, where he's at his life, how he's, just let me know where Ritchie's at and what you want, and how you think I should be going in the direction you want me to. And he explained it to me and told me this, that, you don't care about Alan Brady. He ruined your dad's life. He's not, all this wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
For a few minutes. And I said, okay, let's go. So let's rehearse it. And we rehearsed it. And he turned to me and he went, that's perfect.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, and I said, no. He says, no, that's perfect, he said. And he reiterated that to me later on during the show as well. He said, man, you are really, really good. What have you been doing? I can't believe you haven't been. So, again, I'm really good at just hearing and taking direction, and then taking that direction and funneling it into the character that I'm trying to do.
Wow, and that's Carl Reiner again. I mean, we keep talking comedy giants, but I mean, it's Carl Reiner. What, by the way, as another little side segue there, what about Carl Reiner? What was he like as on the set? Because obviously, he was very involved. It was his show, really.
Yeah, Carl was amazing. It was his baby. It was, his love and passion. And he was like that. And Carl was just amazing. He would never get, upset. He would never get, he was just Carl. He was even keeled. He was funny. He was creative. He always brought something out, like when we were doing scenes and he saw something, he goes, let's try this, and we all reacted well. And everybody respected and loved him so much that it was so easy to do what Carl asked you to do, because he is probably one of the most special human beings I've ever known in my life, honestly, on so many levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you, by the way, did you get to know, obviously his son is Rob Reiner, who went on to his own comedy career. Did you get to know him? Was he around as like, a young young man?
Rob used to read me comic books on the set in my dressing room when I was a kid. He would come in. Yeah, he was there often. And he, we had a really good relationship. And, I was still learning to, oh, Jesus, sorry about that. Oh, damn.
Did you spill something?
Sorry, Grateful Dead song. Anyway, sorry. That's my phone. I'm sorry. I apologize to the crowd for not turning it off. My apologies.
We all have life going on. It's okay, Larry.
Anyway, so what was I saying? Anyway, so Carl, like I said, was one of the most just amazing human beings ever. And I'm so lucky and blessed that I was able to like grow up with him, really. And I can't say enough about him. The whole cast, really. I mean, we were like a family. It's cliche-ish and you hear it all the time, but we really were a family. We did things together. I would go to Jerry Paris's house and spend a couple nights with their kids, and I would go with Rosemary, and we would do things together, and I think that shows on the screen basically as it comes out as from the actors.
What well, two things. I want to go back. Unfortunately, that thing set you up.
Sorry.
Rob Reiner. Wait, he was reading you comic books, and you were about to say something. I was like,
yeah. So I was still kind of learning in my schooling and stuff, and Rob would come in, and I loved the old Harvey. I think Harvey. It was like Ritchie Rich and Hot Stuff and all these crazy little comic books.
yeah.
And Rob would sit in the dressing room and just read me the comic book, and that was so much fun, and it was just wonderful. And again, he was a really great guy. I mean, still is, and I like Rob for several reasons, including his political views, which I really support him.
Gotcha. Is he was he kind of like a mini Carl?
Yeah, kind of a little bit. He wasn't quite as animated at the time as Carl was, because again, he was young too, but you can see a lot of Carl in him, but more importantly with him and Carl, they were just, again, it was the kindness, it was the genuine, genuineness, if there's such a word for that, of both of them that you could see in the family. And so was his daughter, and and so was Estelle. I mean, that they were just a wonderful, family, really.
Wow. You by the way, I was researching the show, and there's like 4 episodes, and forgive me, I don't know all the titles, but that did not shoot in front of a live studio audience. Do you remember those? And if so, was that difficult not having that audience response?
So one of them was my birthday show.
Mm.
And it was because we were shooting it when Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh.
And I'll never forget, it was like, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were rehearsing, Carl came in and said, okay, everybody stop. The president's just been assassinated. And we were like, and everybody, and even at 63, I was 8 years old at the time. And I was very aware of President Kennedy. I watched, grew up with all that stuff. I was very aware of the whole political climate back then, especially since I'm number 6 out of 7 kids. So there was, 5 children older than I am, and my parents. And so he came in and we stopped, and there was a radio, like an old stereo thing that was in the back of the Petrie's room back there when you went into Ritchie's room or into the office. We turned it on, we listened to Walter Cronkite call it, and Carl said, we're all going home.
Oh.
We're done. We need to just go away. We came back and we shot that episode without an audience. And it was a great episode. It was one, if you remember, with all the kids running around in the house, because Richie went a birthday party, but it was raining, so they moved it inside, and the clown didn't show up, and Rob was the clown, blah, 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 blah. So that was one of them, and I thought it was a great job. The other one we did without an audience was the Christmas show, because there was so many different segments going on that we did that, and that was very easy for me. None of it really was hard for me. I loved having the audience, but when you get into that moment, I mean, you're acting, you're doing what you're doing, you don't think about it. And then the other one we did was the last episode we ever filmed, which was called The Gunslinger, which was where Rob went to get a tooth pulled, went into a dream sequence and dreamed he was the sheriff of a town. And Alan Brady was the bad guy, Big Bad Brady, and Rob had to shoot him. And that we filmed on location in a way in parts where we didn't have the audience. So those were the three I remember that we did. And I don't know if there might have been another one I might not have been in, but I don't remember that.
Boy, that's a strong memory. I got to be honest with you. When you mentioned the Kennedy assassination, I literally had like goosebumps just go through my entire body. The way wow, that just had to be quite a moment to be on the set.
It was yeah, it was, like I said, it was very poignant. Like I said, I literally remember it like it was yesterday and everything that went on with it. And it was just really, it was quite a sad moment in our history. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. Hey, how was, you know, I have a lot of different listener subscribers that often ask, you know, how was the set up? And how was it? Like, was it the living room? And then, you know, what was next to it and all of that stuff?
Yeah. So the sets are all set up so they're open, as you know, so you can film everything. So from going from my left to right as I'm looking at the set, the Petri bedroom was the first thing. Next to that was the living room. Okay. Next to that was the kitchen. So the household was all kind of together. And then on the other side of the kitchen was the office.
Oh, wow. Wow. And another one that I saw, which was ironic, because that episode that I'm talking about, I believe your bedroom is in that epised. I just don't. But
which episode?
I think it's actually, I saw a couple. There was one where you had that like tent over the bed, and I think Dick was thinking you were faking it. He's talking to you, and it's I think it's a cupcake. He's handing you a cupcake.
He did the cupcake test.
Yeah,
you know, he says one out of 5 out of 10 doctors will tell you the cupcake test is not conclusive. I mean, anyway, it was very funny. That was the pilot. So that was done in a whole set in different area and stuff. We did it on a different stage, and that was the pilot. That was the TV in the bedroom. Yes, and I trying to think. I don't remember if we had an audience for the pilot or not. We might have. And then the other one, there was a episode called Never Name a Duck, where Ritchie had got a couple ducks out of the local pond, brought them home, and one of them got sick and died. The other one had to go back into the wild, and Rob had to come into Ritchie's bedroom and tell him we were going to put Stanley back in the lake.
Oh, yeah.
And I was packing to go away because I wanted to go live with Stanley, and that was in the Ritchie's bedroom. And to probably for me, the best dramatic performance I really ever did on the show. It was really, I thought it was, I was really happy with the performance I did. And it was really special. And there's a Sheldon Leonard story with that too, who I didn't even mention Sheldon Leonard. My goodness, think about who else with Danny
legend,
Sheldon Leonard, and like all these people, right? And I was supposed to be crying in the scene, and I went to my mother and I said, you know, I don't know, how do I cry, Mom? The only time I cry is when Dad, beats me. Just kidding. Anyway, and she goes, well, you go talk to Mr. Leonard and you tell him, and he can help you with that. So I went to Sheldon and I said, Mr. Leonard, I need to be able to cry, and my mom said you could help me. So there's a picture that we have of him kneeling, holding me by my arms and kneeling in front of me and talking to me. It was right behind stage before we went on in the bedroom you were talking about. It was right before we went on, and Sheldon knelt down and said, and he told me this story, this heart-wrenching story of this dog they had that was tragically killed. And I was a big, animal lover, big dog fan. And tragically killed. And in minutes, I was just, in tears. And he says, okay, and action, we went on set, and that's how it happened. Turns out I don't think he had a dog, but, Sheldon was brilliant. That's just the way he
Wow. That's a great story. So did they have to build that your bedroom every time? Because, I mean, it was only on like couple times, maybe?
A couple episodes. There was one where they used the bedroom to, where the FBI set up a sting operation in the bedroom to spy on the neighbor across the street. They were called swing sets. We would do a swing set. So we would bring that in basically as a separate little set kind of on the side somewhere to do, and they would build that for those times and then strike it after we were done.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. Do you have, did you, or, well, did you at the time? I mean, obviously you're a young kid. Did you realize how big the show was, or was it completely oblivious?
No, we didn't know. None of us really knew, honestly. It wasn't just me. I mean, probably me more than anybody, because I was just a kid having a good time and doing a show and being able to go out and pretend I was, somebody else. And so, but I had no idea. And you talk to Rosemary and Morey and even Dick and Mary at some point said, we didn't have any idea it was going to become what it was. And it was going to be this iconic, historic, unbelievably monumental work in our television industry, history, entertainment.
Literally.
We had no idea. We were just doing what we did and we enjoyed it. And I think by the third or fourth year, we kind of figured out after the Emmys and stuff we won that, wow, this is a really good show and we're having a good time with it. But none of us really even imagined it would go on to do the reruns it did. And here we are, what, 60 something years later now, talking from when we started, and still, going strong, which is just incredible.
It's an easy watch, by the way. One thing I have to say, I mean, like I said, I literally just watched an episode like 2 days ago. It's not like you're watching, you go, oh boy, this is so dated. It's like you go right in there and it's like, oh, mom and dad, kid, they're friends. Like you just get the emotions between them. It just goes on, it doesn't feel, it feels very timeless to me.
It is. And the office scenes with, Rose and Morey were so amazing. The way Dick and the three played off of each other was fantastic. And again, I go back to Carl Reiner for this, because Carl specifically said we never did any kind of topics of the day like a Murphy Brown or something like that where it would date the show. Carl wanted it to be basically timeless, and so he was very careful about the scripts he wrote and what he did to make it that way, so it would be timeless and people for all time would relate to the situations going on, because they're just real, they're human, and they were, just like a family and an office worker would go through. And that's, again, why I think it's held up over the test of time so well.
Boy, talk about a genius. I mean, he literally said that. I didn't realize he had actually verbalized that. That's really impressive. Okay.
Yeah.
I get you. We've mentioned, obviously we mentioned Morey, we've mentioned Rose a few times. Let's talk a little bit about them, because I know Rosemary. I mean, she literally, I feel like, was in the business forever. I mean, she goes back to like baby Rosemary, baby Rose. And I did see, by the way, that you have the same birthday. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. Yep. August 15th. Yep. We were very close, Rose and I were, and our families.
Oh, you were.
Yeah.
What, like you mentioned earlier, and I, whatever, we've got so many things we're talking about, but you said like we did things, away from the set. What?
I mean, we'd go to Rose's house and just visit with her, and her daughter Noopy was there, and I would, talk to Noopy and hang with Noopy, and there were a few things we would go out and do a couple outings together, Christmas stuff or something like that, where we'd want to go to a little Christmas, event or lot or something like that. And there were things over the years. And then Rose was an amazing cook. She's Italian, of course. So we had the Italian connection going on.
Mm-hmm.
And she was truly like an aunt to me. She was like and my mother and her were close, and that was kind of cool. So we always had a great relationship with Rose and the family, and her husband, Bobby, who unfortunately died when she was on the show.
Yeah.
It was also just an amazing guy. And he'd take me to baseball games. He would, that kind of stuff. Right.
Wow.
And it was just amazing. And so we were close to the very end, actually, her and I.
What was she like actually off the set? Because obviously she had that, she could get into that kind of crazy energy or whatever, but what was she like off set?
She was Rose. She was, she was kind, sweet, wonderful, but Italian. Mm-hmm. She had that edge to her. She could have that edge to her. She could be a little gruff and rough around the edges. But it was all done with a loving sense, if that makes any sense. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh yeah, it does.
You know, you being Italian, you're Sicilian, you should understand that very well.
I understand it really well.
You know, anyway, John. So, but that was Rose, and you know, to the end, and she was never had a problem speaking her mind. You know, and that was okay. But she was true to herself, and I think that's what we loved her for.
You know, there is a clip, I think I saw it on YouTube, where you are awarded the Golden Halo Achievement Award, I believe.
Yeah, I
And
was. Yeah,
I gotta tell you, it's a small moment, but it is so touching. She like reaches up to get like your head and like pulls it tight, and it just really says it all.
yeah, and that was us. We, you know, I was very lucky. Again, I told you the story with Mary, but Rosemary had done her documentary toward the end of her life, and it was a lifelong thing for her to do. It was like a big, and she finally got it done. And it was a really good documentary. I don't know if you ever saw it or not.
I didn't, and it's been on my list for real. Yeah.
It's a pretty good documentary. It actually is very good. And so they had screenings, and she asked me to come. They asked me to come to one of the premiere screenings. I couldn't make it. I was living in Burbank at the time. It was all the way over on the west side, and for different reasons, I didn't do it. So then they had another screening, another premiere screening at another theater. I think it was in Hollywood somewhere. And Rose actually called me and said, Larry, I really want you to come to this. Would you please, please? And I said, yes, of course I will. So I went to the screening and watched it. And after the screening was over, we were sitting together. And she said, and I said, you know, and she just leaned at me, she goes, you know, I just love you so, so much. And I always have. And you know, I just love you. And I said, Rose, and I love you too. And I always have. And always been a special person in my life, and vice versa. Wow. And she died a few months later. So we were able to have that kind of last minute, which is kind of bringing a little tear to my eye, but that's what it was.
Gosh, you had a couple there between Mary and Rose that those are really special times. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that, because honestly, that's pretty wild. Okay, you got to me on that one, Larry. Thanks. And then
got to me.
Yeah, that was intense. Morey, by the way, who, by the way, it's hard to describe Morey Amsterdam. I mean, honestly, he just was like a bullet. I mean, he just looked like, you know.
Morey was always Morey. He was always on, you know, we at his service when he passed away, some people got up and spoke, and they said Morey never had a bad word to say about anybody, and it's true. He really didn't.
Oh wow.
He was always upbeat. He was always very positive. Everything was great. Morey, how you doing? He could have been in the worst, but he goes, I'm doing great. Everything's great. You know, I mean, that was Morey. He was just always this positive, amazing energy, always on, always funny, and always trying to make people laugh and entertain them. That was Morey. Example, we went when Dick Van Dyke got his star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. We went to it and had a ceremony. I have a picture of Dick, Morey, Carl Reiner, Sheldon Leonard, and myself around the star.
Oh, that's special.
Which is great. And then at the bank, the brunch lunch we had after the dedication, it was at the Roosevelt Hotel, famous hotel in Hollywood.
Very.
And I sat next to Morey, and it was just, I couldn't eat my food. It was a one-liner after another the whole damn lunch, and it was just Morey. He was great, and he was Buddy Sorrell, man. I mean, you know, it was great.
Oh, I love hearing that. The other, you know, you had so many people you were around that were incredible. Jerry Paris, I have not heard a great deal about him. Always appreciated him so much, and obviously is a massive talent. What was he like, you know, kind of as a man?
Well, again, Jerry was kind of like an uncle-ish to me as well. We just connected very well. A, from the times he was on the show, and then B, of course, he directed like so many episodes as well, and was so great with that. And Jerry, again, always happy, always positive, always just, you know, trying to make everybody better and do a good job. And as I said, we became close where, you know, I would go down and spend, you know, a night or two here at his house over the years we did the show with his sons and his daughter, and we just had a great time. So Jerry was, again, like a very close person in my life. And in fact, it was funny because when they were doing Happy Days, they called me in to read for the part of Potsie. And Jerry was producing and directing. That was, you know, his show. And it came down to me and Anson, and they picked Anson over me at the, you know, that was just the decision they made.
Yeah.
And Jerry made a point to call me and say, Larry, you're wonderful. You were great. We went with Anson for a couple different reasons, but I just wanted to let you know that thank you, and thank you for doing this. And, you know, I'm sure we'll see you again. And so that was Jerry Paris.
That shows you the class. It's not just business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow, that's wild. It came down to you and Anson. And by the way, as you said it, I could totally see it. I was like, oh my gosh, I could totally see you playing that part.
Oh, what my life would be like now if I was only Potsie on Happy Day.
Well, you're both good guys, by the way. I have had Anson on the show. I've met him. He's very, very nice.
Anson's a great guy. I met him as well. He's a really wonderful guy.
He is. Jerry Van Dyke, by the way, was he on the show or I can't remember. Was he around?
Well, in the episodes he did, he was there. And you know, and then he would visit every so often. Not as much as say Rob Wood or Reiner or some of the other people, but Jerry was there, and Dick summed it up perfectly at Jerry's service, which we were at. They held it at the old coach stage. On Universal lot. And Dick said, you know, everybody thinks I was the comic, I was the comedian. He goes, I'm a performer, and I can perform and you know, do things like that. Jerry was truly the comedian. And he was. And again, when we did the revisited show and Jerry was on it, we'd hang out, you know, in between scenes or whatever. They'd be doing something else, and we'd be sitting around, and Jerry was like the practical joker. I mean, he just wouldn't stop. It was like, you know, it was great. And him and I became close over the years. And that's when he passed away, his wife made a point to get in touch with me and said, you must come to the service. We really want you to be there for us. So, yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. I didn't know that. You also had a lot of great guest stars. Do you remember any in particular that when you were like, oh, that was somebody that it was cool that they were on the show or anything like that?
Several. Ken Berry, who I worked with later in my life, who was on the show and remembers. The thing about the Dick Van Dyke Show is the guest stars and people that I met there always remembered me. Even later in life, I'd see him and go, oh yeah, Larry, yeah, of course. Ken Berry, Don Rickles, of course, right? Vic Damone, who I have a picture of him and I standing in the dressing room together. In the doorway, I should say. Let's not get crazy. Anyway, and Bob Crane, who was on the show as well.
Oh yeah, do you remember anything about him, by the way?
Not a lot. Bob was just kind of he was an interesting guy. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
I think that's pretty public knowledge. I mean, you know.
No, I know. Yeah.
But you know, Chad and Jeremy, who was great. They were on the show. Eddie Hodges was on the show with us. I mean, the list is really quite extensive, you know, of the people that were on the show, and every one of them. And there's a documentary that a friend of mine named David Van Dusen did on the 60th anniversary of the show. And he interviewed a lot of the old guest stars and went back for years, and all of them said that was probably the most wonderful guest appearance they'd ever done, was being on the Dick Van Dyke Show. They always loved getting the call to be the guest on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Jackie Joseph was on a few episodes, who was a very great character actor. You know, and so, you know, it goes on and on. It was pretty amazing.
It's so cool. Sorry, it's just so cool. So do you still watch some of the episodes, or has it been a long time, or what, how does I'm always curious.
Oh no, I watch them when I can. I was really upset. They were on they were showing them 2 days, twice a day on a channel called Get TV, and my provider, who I can't stand, but I have to have it, kind of like whatever. They took Get TV off the lineup, so I wasn't able to see them. I would watch them. I'd sit there and have lunch and watch 11 to 12 or something. They had them on.
Yeah.
And now I just sometimes the Sunday nights I'll jump in bed and raise the bed up and watch them on MeTV, and it's always fun. And like I said to you earlier, it's just, now when I watch them, and every time I watch them, even though I've seen them before, I can always find something kind of different and, new, as it were, for lack of a better word, to see and go, oh man, that was a great bit they did. That was a great you know what I mean? And like I said, when I come out and see my performances, and I'm very self-critique-ish. I'm, my own worst, critic. And I look and I go, God, I did a really good job there. I'm pretty pleased with that, so yeah.
You should be. Like I said, you should be. There is one for me that it always stuck in my head, and I don't know why. I can't explain it. It's the Woodpecker episode. Do you recall that one?
Oh yeah,
was that real?
Oh yeah,
that was real.
So that was written. That happened to Carl's neighbor, and that's where he got that story from. And as the story goes on, you find out that the woodpecker was trying to get Ritchie's hair to build a nest.
Yeah, right. Oh,
and
yeah,
that's what it was doing. And he would fly in and get the hairbrush or attack Ritchie because he was trying to build a nest. And that was a real story in New Rochelle that happened to one of Carl's neighbors. And when we shot the show, at the end of the show, when we figured out the game warden came in and said, well, they were trying to get the hare to build a nest, and et cetera, et cetera. And I found out about it, and I was like, oh, well, if you want a nest, that's great. And I leaned over to the cage and let him peck some hair out of my head. Well, I was, scared. I was like, no, are you going to let a bird peck on my head? I was freaking out, right, as a kid, right?
Oh, I'd freak out as an adult. What are you talking about? Yeah.
And they said, no. I said, how's it going to do it? Well, we're going to put a worm on your head. And I was like, what? Oh my God, I'm such a germaphobe anyway. It's like, no, I can't have a worm in my eyes. I mean, I was just freaking out, and they talked me off the ledge and finally did it. I think Carl had something to do with that as well. And again, they put it on there, and I leaned over and he pecked my head and got the worm out, and it was like, wow, that was all. Geez, I swear it was going to be much worse than that, but it was pretty easy. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
Oh, I can't.
That was a good episode.
Oh, that was a great episode. I can't believe, one, it's real. And the whole idea of putting the worm on your head and then having that thing grab, I'm just like, come on.
Yeah, that was true. That was a definite, that happened. It was crazy, but
I'll be darned. That's really neat. So here's another one. I had, oh geez, I can't believe I can't remember who it was. Oh my gosh. I literally can't believe it. Somebody in comedy, and it's terrible, I'm blanking, but they were donating their some of their items to that. I know who it was. George Schlatter was on.
Oh, yeah.
Kill me for not remembering that. But anyway, he is donating a bunch of his papers and things in Jamestown, New York, the comedy museum that's out there. So when I was going through that, I saw that you had donated Carl Reiner's desk.
Alan Brady's desk.
Alan Brady's desk. I'm sorry, Alan Brady's. How did that come about?
Very, very, very weird and interesting. So, when I got out of college and I went back to Ronnie Jacobs, who was our associate producer of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and said, I want to get back into business. And he brought me in, and I was just, like every other, buddy starting the business, just being a gopher, go for this, go for that.
Sure.
Assistant the producer and just doing whatever I could, reading scripts to kind of get my foot back in the door in a behind the scenes capacity. And so they had a big sound stage at MGM. That was the MGM studios down in Culver City, where they had stored set furniture from all the shows they had done. Joey Bishop, Make Room for Daddy, Gomer Pyle, Dick Van Dyke, I Spy, Andy Griffith. Those were all Danny Thomas and Sheldon Leonard shows.
I'd have loved to have seen that.
And so myself and the guy who was our like kind of worker driver kind of guy were tasked with renting this huge truck because MGM wanted their studio back, and going down there and for a week moving all this furniture out and storing it in another storage place we had rented up in North Hollywood, Studio City. So Ronnie Jacobs said, look, if there's anything you guys want, just take it. I don't care. If there's all this furniture, just if you want to see something you want, take it.
Oh my gosh.
So the guy who was working with me, Chet, said, he goes, there's this really great desk there. And I said, I need a desk. I don't have a desk. And this thing is massive. I mean, you've seen it. It's massive and it weighs a ton. It's good style furniture, right?
Yeah.
And so I went, yeah. And there was this beautiful chair that went with it. And I said, I'd love this desk. So I took it and I had it and I lugged it around apartments for years and, this and that and moving it. And one day I'm sitting at the desk. I have these, remember the old little TVs that had the VHS built into them?
Oh, I do. I had one.
Like a little 12-inch TV or whatever it was, right? And I'm sitting there probably smoking weed. I don't, whatever. Watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. And the episode comes on where Rob has to go break into Alan's office and get a script out of his desk that got put in there accidentally, which is the one they didn't want.
Yep.
And I'm watching this and he's going to the drawers and I'm looking at the drawers and I'm going like, hey, wait a second. That looks really familiar. That looks like my desk. And I'm like, I think it is my desk. And like, wow. And then a few days later, the Coast to Coast Big Mouth came on, which is where he was at the desk with all the bald, Laura told everybody he was bald. He had all the toupees lined up.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I went, that is my desk. I have Alan Brady's desk. Geez, how did this, what? And then I put two and two together and it made a lot of sense. And I looked at research. So yes, I did. I had it forever and ever and ever, 30 something plus years or something, maybe longer. And then when Jennifer and I were moving one time and we just didn't have a room for it. So David put us in touch with the museum. I was able to donate to the museum. So it sits in the Jamestown Museum for Comedy, which Lucille Ball started, and they have a whole exhibit kind of wing dedicated to Carl Reiner.
I mean, I'm sorry, that is a wild story. What are the chances that place was filled with all of that stuff and that's what you picked out?
And that's the desk I came up with. I was like, I know, right? It's like,
whoa.
Yeah, pretty serendipitous. It's just kind of
that's really serendipitous. Oh my gosh. Hey, I haven't released this interview yet, but I also interviewed Keith Thibodeaux. And great, by the way, wonderful. I appreciated that one as much as the interview with yourself. And but he told me during the interview, he said that at times your sets were by each other at Desilu, I guess.
Yeah, and, well, we were actually well, see, I think they filmed I Love Lucy at the Desilu Melrose. There was two Desilu studios.
Mm-hmm.
There was the one which is now Paramount Studios, which was the original Desilu studios on Melrose and God, I'm trying to Vine something or Vineland or Vine or something like that. Vine.
Yeah.
And then there was our studio, which was at Cahuenga and Willoughby, which is a Desilu studio as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we were both at the two different studios, but I mean, Lucy would come over often and kind of like lurk up in the rafters and see what was going on. And everybody knew she was coming, said we're leaving because they didn't want to be around her. But yeah, it's all part of the Desilu family, which is what Keith, I'm sure, is referring to.
Yeah, he said that you sometimes had a chance to see each other or whatever, but that you were slightly different, I guess, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, because we would go to the different studios. I mean, we would, go visit there and they'd come visit here just to see what was going on because it was all part of that whole, era of Hollywood. And like I said, in our studio at the Desilu Cahuenga lot, there was, 4 or 5, shows going at the same time, and, Dan Thomas, Dick Van Dyke, Joey Bishop, I Spy, Andy Griffith, and
Wow.
later Gomer Pyle, and all these shows were being shot all in the same lot.
Were there other kids to play with from any of these other shows or anything like that?
The only one I really, Angela Cartwright, who I would go visit because they were right next door to us. I knew Rusty, but Rusty was kind of he was very, that's the word I'm looking for, just kind of to himself a lot,
Rusty Hamer?
Yeah, Rusty Hamer, yeah.
Yeah.
And so Angela and I would kind of see each other, and then every so often I'd go down and see Ronnie Howard, when he was down on Andy Griffith's show, because Ronnie and I grew up in Burbank together. We actually played Little League together in Burbank as kids.
He's a big baseball. I remember that. That was a big part of his life. Yeah.
So we played Little League together, but other than that, it was more just the kids from our own, Dick Van Dyke group. Like I said, like Barry Van Dyke would come, and Stacy Van Dyke, and then Noopy, Rosemary's daughter, and then Rob Reiner, Ritchie, more, and then some of the, like the assistant, John Shulay's daughter Cornell, and people that would just come and visit their parents or whatever when they had time to set, and I would hang out with them.
Did you stay in touch with Angela? Or I've had her on the show, by the way. She was wonderful too.
As when we cross paths, we actually, it's very like, Larry, how are you? Angela, are you? Great. And we kind of catch up. We don't stay in touch with each other really on a regular basis, but when we cross paths, it's always still very, like, hey, yeah, we remember very well the childhood, and we talk about that, and then just things we've been doing since then and have done since then.
Wow. I did see one interview, and did I get this right, that you played catch with Bill Cosby and Robert Culp?
Taught me how to throw a football.
Wow.
Taught me how to throw a football. And Joey Bishop as well, because we were all out there at the same time, and we'd get around and throw the ball around together. Yep.
Okay. Joey Bishop. Okay. All right. That's pretty wild. The other one, Ronnie Schell from Gomer Pyle. His son is, we know each other quite well. And so I know Ronnie pretty good as well. But you mentioned Gomer Pyle. Did you ever get a chance to be around Ronnie?
Love Ronnie. One of the greatest guys ever. A sweetheart of a man. Him, Jim Nabors, I, of course, would, see, and Ronnie and Frank Sutton. They're all just wonderful, wonderful people. Ronnie is one of those guys that remembered, we would be next to each other for a couple of years doing the show. We'd see each other all the time. And then I wouldn't see him for maybe 20, 30 years. And then I would see him, at Sam Denoff's funeral service. And it was like, time had stood still, and he was just Sam and Larry, and we'd talk, and it just was like nothing had changed. It just, I was an adult, and it was just wonderful. But Ronnie is a great, great guy.
Yeah, he's still going pretty strong, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
So, hey, by the way, I saw one interview, and you mentioned this, and I just was curious, in this interview, did I get this correct? It said you worked on soap. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. I managed post-production for soap for 2 years. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So were you, I consider that also one of those groundbreaking shows. What was that like? Soap was the most fun show to work on. It was great. One of my dearest, closest friends in the world, I met there. She then went on to produce the Golden Girls for Whit Thomas Harris. She's won Emmy Awards for that. Her name is Marsha Posner Williams. I have some great friends still from those days, and it was, a crazy cocaine-induced time in, the entertainment business in the 70s and 80s. Yeah.
And we just had a friggin' ball, man. I can't tell you the fun we had doing that show. The show was amazing. It was groundbreaking, as you said. It almost didn't get on the air because of the right-wing religious groups that boycotted it and said they didn't want it because they had an openly gay character, and very controversial affair, marital affairs going on. It was just irreverent as could be, and ABC finally stuck by it. Vlasic Pickles, believe it or not, who was a sponsor, people were pulling their sponsorship, and Vlasic said, no way, we're not. We're behind it 100%. And they kind of were instrumental in keeping the show going. And I just think it's one of the greatest shows ever. It's just so fun to watch. And the comedy was incredible. The cast was amazing. And I had such a great time with it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That was a Susan Harris show. I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me this, the other ones, I saw, you mentioned, I mean, I went through your whole thing that I could. Bill Bixby was one who I have met, by the way, you know, before he passed, when he was just directing. Personally, I found him to be an extremely nice person. What was your experience with Bill Bixby? I
love Bill. Bill was one of the most wonderful people I ever knew, and I knew him pretty well. He did a guest spot on the Dick Van Dyke Show as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You could look it up, and I'm pretty sure Bill did a guest spot on it.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the party scenes or something, but we could look that up. And then, of course, Eddie's father was also a Danny Thomas and Sheldon Leonard show. And then later in life, when I was working with Ronnie Jacobs and Danny Thomas for Danny Thomas Productions, we did a movie. The first movie I did is behind the scenes as an assistant to the producer. Bill directed. And I used to pick Bill up every morning and drive him to the set and drive him back home. And, you know, when we get home, we might sit there and, you know, talk for a while with his wife at the time, Brenda. And he was a great, great guy. And I was very sad, you know, with him and his wife. But he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and creative and talented. Oh, my goodness gracious. What a great director he was.
Yeah, he left way too soon. Way too soon. The other one I got to hear about, and I got to tell you, I'm so jealous. I can't even tell you, Larry, is Groucho Marx. I mean, I literally, the Marx Brothers for me have always been like the most like incredible thing.
You know, there's few people in this business that I've met, as you can imagine, countless stars and superstars over the years. And
oh gosh, yeah.
And there's only a couple that really, you know, those moments in my life that are like these like whoa moments. You know, it's like, oh my God, I have to meet this man. Grew up Marx Brothers. I think if I took you on a little tour of the house, there's Marx Brothers posters and animal crackers and Groucho frames and stuff all over our house.
Oh, is that cool?
Yeah. An Evening with Groucho, which was a thing he did at the Amundsen Theater, God, way back in the 70s. And
wow.
And so two people. So one, I was working in a film lab called CFI where I was doing sales, and Frank Capra Jr. came in to screen a dailies of something he was involved with as a producer or something.
Oh my gosh, a legend.
And I went, I have to meet Frank Capra Jr. I have to. This is just like, yeah, I mean, legend is not even describing, as you know, what he was.
Well, yeah, what was that like? Like, what
I just went, tiny little guy, sweet guy. And I just went down and he was standing around. I said, Mr. Capra, I'm sorry. I don't mean to intrude and interrupt, but I have to shake your hand. I have to meet you. I've been in the industry since I was a child. I was in Dick Van Dyke Show. He goes, oh yeah, it's a great show. And I talked for a couple minutes and thanked him. And he was just kind and gentle and sweet, and couldn't have been more appreciative for somebody coming up and just saying something to him in the middle of nowhere. So that was one.
That's so cool, Larry.
The other is, as you just said with Groucho, when I was at UCLA, they had re-released Animal Crackers at a theater in Westwood, which was, it had not been shown for years. For whatever reason, it had been locked away, that they wouldn't show. And down in Westwood, they would have Marx Brothers, you know, festivals and I'd go watch like, you know, 8 movies over like, you know, a day or two.
Yep.
But they never saw Animal Crackers. So Animal Crackers was being released. And so I was walking around Westwood again, probably high, you know, at the time.
I got you.
And we were going to go see Animal Crackers. And I went in front of the theater and I looked in a car, and it was a Pinto. I'll never forget it. And the girl driving was the girl, Erin, I forget her last name.
Fleming.
Fleming, who was kind of like his caretaking kind of person at the end of his life and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And I looked in the car and I went, that's Groucho. Sitting in the car in front of the theater.
In a Pinto, by the way, is really
Pinto.
funny. Yeah.
And I went up, and again, same thing. I said, Groucho, I'm sorry. I don't mean to, intrude on your time. You're my hero. You're my comedic legend. I just can't tell you, what you meant to me in my life in terms of just laughing, making people laugh, being that sarcastic kind of great. And he shook my hand and said, well, thank you, son. Thank you. That's really sweet. And oh yeah, well, we enjoyed it. And, we love doing it. And I said, I was in the business since I was a kid. And he goes, oh, good for you. You keep it up, And, I said, again, I don't mean to, take your time. But he goes, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just waiting for Aaron to come back. And we talked for a couple of minutes, and I shook his hand, and I got up, and I was like, oh, I can die.
Oh my gosh, what a moment in time. I mean, seriously, that would be like the rarest of moments. That's so cool you did that. Oh my gosh.
It was pretty awesome. So.
I love that. So on the other side of the coin, why did you leave acting? I mean, you were kind of at the, the pinnacle, so to speak, and then you step away. What was it?
Well, it wasn't for lack of wanting to, trust me, because I've been asked that question. Yeah. I love acting, and I loved, performing, and it was never that. But when the Dick Van Dyke Show ended, I just kind of wanted to be in school with, and kind of do what I hadn't been doing since I was a kid, play sports, and just kind of be with my brothers and family. But I did stage plays during that time. So I would do theater, voluntary theater plays, and kept my kind of hand going and performing. And then when I got out of high school, I did several theater productions, and then went to UCLA, a theater arts major there. And when I got out, I went back to my agent and said, look, I want to get back and do some acting. They said, fine. Took a bunch of new headshots, and they sent me on interviews. And here I am going, oh, I'm going to an interview. I'm just going to get this job. This is going to be easy. I mean, I was Ritchie Petrie. Come on.
Right. Everybody knows you. Yeah.
And I walked into this room of 50 people, cattle call extraordinaire.
Yep.
Typical casting call, horrible environment, and went in to read. Okay, read this. Well, read. Okay, thank you very much. Next. And I'm like, well, no, we're good, fine. And just, it was like a total, boom, bin out the door.
Yep.
It was very, very discouraging. It was very, very deflating, as it were.
Oh, definitely.
And so I basically did a couple of those and went, you know what, this is too depressing for me. And that's when I went to Ronnie and I said, look, I want to work in the business. Can I work, come and work with you at your company? And basically made that move to go in production, post-production, and behind the scenes of the business, just because I had to make a living and make a career, and that's what I could do that. You know what I mean? And I did little bits and pieces here and there over the years, but it was just something I, could do for fun, and wasn't like I couldn't make a living at it. And so that's why. And it's like I said, not because I didn't want to. I've had people ask me, well, why did you not want to? I said, I do. I love acting. I love performing, and I'm happy to do it, now. But it just, I needed to make a living, and make my way through life and actually, do something. So that's just the turn that life took.
I think that's impressive. What as a post-production guy, what shows have you worked on then?
Well, we talked about Soap, Benson, several independent films with Danny Thomas Productions. And then I went into, at the suggestion of my buddy Marcia, who I talked about earlier, who produced Golden Girls. Soap had been canceled, and we everybody, was, because you didn't work there, it was like I wasn't working anymore, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And Marcia came to me and said, Ma, she goes, you know what? She goes, you ever thought about doing sales? And I said, what? She goes, you'd be brilliant. You're such a good person. You're so outgoing. Your acting is, wonderful. She goes, get into sales. And so I got in touch with I was doing odd jobs here and there, as a production associate and assistant director and things like that on little, projects here. And I would find, And this guy said to me, look, there's a sales job open for a film lab called CFI, and you should go interview. And I did. And I got the job, and basically took off my career doing, post-production sales for facilities and labs and things like that. And that's basically what I did most of my life. I managed production post facilities, and I ran sales, and I did that. And it worked well. It was fun.
Sounds like it worked out great for you. Last question, and I'll let you go. I as we're talking, I'm thinking we've mentioned Danny Thomas multiple times. I never even asked you, what was Danny Thomas like?
So Danny has some funny stuff. I don't think we have enough time to get into it, but
well, tell me something. Tell me one.
When I went back to work for Danny Thomas Productions, Ronnie was running it, but Danny was there all the time, in and out.
Huh.
And Danny at one point told me one time, he says, "You're the second or third best child actor I've ever come across in my life." He goes, and I'll tell you the three. He goes, Rusty Hamer was the best. He goes, he was amazing. He goes, and you and Ron Howard were right there. He says, you're the next two that I would say would be the best child actors and that just meant the world to me. Danny was a sweetheart. Danny was put on this Danny rough kind of Danny image, because that's what Danny did. But beneath it, he was as gentle as can be, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful man. When they did a night at the museum in LA. It was a tribute to Thomas and Leonard at the Broadcast Museum down in Wilshire.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tribute to Danny and Sheldon of all the shows they had done over the years. And I said, Bill Bixby was there, and I was there, and everybody from all the shows they did, Andy Griffith and all these wonderful shows. And at the end of the night, we were backstage talking, and I went up to Danny and I said, Danny, I just have to tell you that I love you very much. And I thank you, because if it wasn't for you and Sheldon, and I had a really successful career in post at the time, post sales and stuff.
Sure.
But I said, if it wasn't for you, I don't know what I ever would have done with my life. I don't know what career I would have had. And I don't know where I would have been. And it was because of you guys that I'm able to do what I did and be successful. And I just have to thank you so much for that. And he leaned over and he turned around and he kissed me in the head and he says, no, son, he goes, it's us who have to thank you. He goes, if it wasn't for all you wonderful people that made these shows what they are, we would have never been anything. And that was Danny.
Wow. I didn't expect that. I mean, that's wow, that it doesn't get much more humble.
No, he really was. He was, and that shows because he started St. Jude, and that's, I mean, let's think about that. How humble is that to start a shrine because he went in and prayed to St. Jude to give him a career and said he would build him a shrine, and he didn't know what it would be, and his career took off, and that's how St. Jude Hospital came about. Yeah,
that's just something else. Well, I got to tell you, Larry, I've interviewed a lot of people on this show, and it's always been a wonderful experience. It's been awesome to have you on. And also you are such a, I don't know, you've had so many great moments to be able to have the moment to close with these people. And I think that is such an amazing gift that most people don't get. And anyway, I just think that's really special.
John, thank you. It is. And I'm so fortunate. And I try to make those happen because, again, life is short and we don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I'm going to see Dick Van Dyke sooner than later because I need to have that last moment with Dick, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And I really want that, and I'll make it happen. It will get there.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've made a point growing up with my family and watching so many of my college buddies have passed and gone, and people I know over the years, and you just kind of get through life and figure you don't have time to say what you want and do and express how you feel about people and what you want. So when you have that moment, you really need to make it count. And so I've tried to do that. And thank you for noticing that, because it is very special to me, and it gives me a great closure in my life as well. So I feel like it's been worth something in a lot of ways,
Oh, I think your life's been worth a lot, Larry. There's no doubt about that. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. And I can't, like I said, I can't thank you enough. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and appreciate it.
And you too. And thanks, John, for having me on. It was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. It's fun to talk about stuff that I don't get to talk about a lot. So I'm glad you brought some of those subjects up, and I appreciate that. And if you need anything or want to do it again, you just let me know, and we'll roll it again.
Larry, extremely kind. I may take you up on it.
All right, John.
All right. Take care of yourself.
You bet, man. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure.
All right, you got it.
As always, thanks for listening, and please hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can be notified when I have a new episode. And also go check out some of my other episodes, like Jerry Mathers, Henry Winkler, Judy Norton, so many. Enjoy.